think what Hamas did on October 7th was enough, most likely. So they want to reward them with more and help them more in their war effort. And the most recent way of them trying to help them is by trying to put sanctions on Europe. So there have been recent talks that, again, when it comes to international politics, or a new policy that's coming, it's always you just look at what was the last big event that happened, and all policy is being shaped by that event. And that event has been the Sunday strike that killed 2 Hamas commanders, but also some Palestinians have died as well. And because of that, pretty much new policy for all of Europe has been set up, which is a potential for some sort of sanctions against Israel. So we'll talk about what it means. We'll talk about, I have a couple quotes to bring up, and we'll also talk a bit more broadly a bit later about some of the recent things that happened, as well as the recognition of the Palestinian state. Joining me today is Jonathan and Kirk. Hey guys. Jonathan, hey. How about you start us off? What do you think about this recent proposal?
Thank you, Dan. Yeah, it's it's getting so absurd. I've been watching these stories on Instagram. I'm sure you guys seen all these guys sharing all eyes on Rafah. Have you seen that, Kirk? It's a great filter for you to know who your friends are and who to unfollow, right? So I've been unfollowing so many people, and I've also been replying to them, and I encourage all of our viewers to do the same, to tell them, shame on you. I use Nazi sympathizer, but you can come up with all sorts of innovative sentences to say to these guys, but they should be, you should stand up against these people. It's very shameful. This entire outrage about what's going on in Rafah, what is Israel doing in Rafah? I was seeing this headline in the Washington Post, horrific scenes from Rafah, something like that. And my immediate reaction is fantastic. That's great. We want to see horrific scenes in Rafah. We want to see that because that's what they deserve. That's what needs to happen. There needs to be some horrific scenes for the war to be won. It can't all be just nice and fun. They get some nice food. They get perhaps some new clothing. They get all shipped from America, coming from trucks to their doorsteps with Amazon, drones. That's not what war is like. War is hell. War is horrific. And they initiated that war, so they get what they deserve. And that's the only way we can hope to achieve peace. That's the only way we can look for victory, only through such horrific scenes. So also the terrible reaction of Israel, of Netanyahu, saying that it's tragic. Have you heard that, guys? It's tragic. No, it isn't. It's tragic that it doesn't happen all the time until the war is won, until they surrender. That's the tragic thing. The tragic thing is that our soldiers die needlessly to protect these scum who celebrate every time that they fire some rockets at Israel. They celebrate despite their entire city surrounded in ruins. They still celebrate because they fired some rockets to scare off the Jews. They completely have no sense of living. They don't focus on living. They're just focused on destroying. And they should be put up for that. We should not say it's tragic that they get what they deserve. It's an act of justice. And that's what their prime minister should have said. He should have said, we are not sorry. This is what's going to happen. This is war. That's what's happening. And deal with it. Surrender. Give us back our hostages. Lay down your weapons. And we'll be out. But they won't do that, won't they? So this all plays down to their hands. We are weak. We are pathetic. I think that's enough for the start.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know yet fully what happened. And to the extent, there are innocents when it comes to these wars, and those are children. So to the extent that children died, or whatever you want to call innocent people died, it is a tragedy. But again, the anger is completely misdirected. It is not Israel that is at fault here. It is Hamas who, for one, decided to initiate this war and is still going on with this war. And as you said, just recently, just tried to send rockets into, into actual Israel, just to remind us that they are still here. They're not going anywhere, and they do not want to go anywhere, and people still support them. But with that, Kirk, what about you? What do you think about all this?
Yeah, I would like to clarify that, yeah, to the extent that innocents are getting killed in Gaza, all of their deaths are on the hands of Hamas, who one started this war and two refuses to surrender and knowingly puts civilians in harm's way because they know that tends to benefit them, that more civilians get killed, more civilians suffer, the more pressure will come down on Israel. And I think I read in one of these articles dealing with the issue of sanctions, I think I read somewhere that Hamas has been, trying to call on the international community to do something. I forgot which article it was in. And yeah, even like the other day, the last few days have been brushing up on my General William Tecumseh Sherman history because it was Memorial Day. I happened to watch Lincoln because Memorial Day, I think, started as more of a Civil War holiday. But I guess even William Tecumseh Sherman, for as brutal as he was during his campaign in the South, his march to the sea, it was kind of regretful for him. Like, he didn't like the idea of war. And even before the Civil War broke out, he was warning the South, like, you guys don't know what you guys are getting yourselves into. Like, war is hell. And a lot of you guys who are, mouthing off right now, you guys don't have a clue of what you guys are in for and what you're going to subject everyone in the South, both the North and the South, to. As for this stuff about sanctions, actually going back to Hamas, another thing I read about this strike on Rafah that resulted in, I guess, 35, 40 civilians getting killed. It's worth reminding everyone that I guess two Hamas commanders, two high up Hamas leaders were killed in that strike. It's also worth reminding that Hamas does not, the 45 figure, I think, is coming from Gaza health officials, which is probably Hamas, and Hamas does not distinguish between civilian and combatant deaths. So this is fog of war. I don't know what happened, but it's entirely possible that Hamas is maybe exaggerating this by virtue of the fact that they don't distinguish between civilian deaths and combatant deaths. So a lot of those deaths could, for as far as we can tell right now, could be combatants. I guess we're going to have to wait and see, though. As far as this business as sanctions go, I think this was proposed by the Irish foreign minister. I think his name is Michael Martin. And he's proposing that the EU impose sanctions. According to the Times of Israel, Martin did not give details on the types of sanctions discussed by the EU diplomats. So it's unclear like what these proposed sanctions would even mean. Even if you read the EU's website, they go back and forth that EU sanctions, they don't always target a country or population. Sometimes they're targeted at specific policies or activities, but sanctions could come in the form of stuff like freezes or travel bans, maybe in the form of economic measures like restrictions on imports and exports and restrictions on banking service, restrictions on arms. According to another source, this is according to sanctionmap.eu. I guess the EU already has sanctions on Hamas for whatever that's worth. I think they have like 3 different terrorism distinguish clarifications, and one of them has to do with Hamas. Another one has to do with Palestinian Islamic Jihad. I think they have asset freezes on Hamas right now. So it sounds like they do try to impose sanctions on Hamas. But I think more broadly, this is part of maybe this isn't part of, but there's been this long effort by a lot of pro-Palestinian activist groups, what's called Boycott, Divestment, and Sanctions, BDS. And this has been going on since at least 2005, according to Wikipedia, where a lot of people, they want to impose sanctions on Israel, boycott, sanctions, divestment, an effort to either condemn Israel, punish Israel, or to pressure Israel to cave in to a lot of their demands. And I think this kind of highlights a double standard from a lot of these people where they think it's totally justified to impose sanctions on Israel, economic sanctions, if it means punishing Israel, pressuring Israel to cave to certain demands. But then if Israel ever does similar actions to Hamas, if they ever impose certain sanctions or blockades on Gaza to restrict, Hamas, which is a terrorist group, from getting arms and other supplies that they would use to wage against Israel. A lot of these same pro-Palestinian activists will condemn it and act like it's this huge humanitarian crisis and injustice or whatever. So I think that's interesting. But yeah, aside from that, I think that's all I have to say on those points. So I will give it back to you, Daniel.
Yeah, I mean, Europe already and all different nations already have some sanctions against the settlements and the Israeli settlers. But you mentioned BDS, and what it reminds me of is this ad which we talked about a couple of months ago. I'm wondering if either of you was on that episode. But basically, the ad starts with someone buying a can of Pepsi, and it basically ends with a rocket coming to Palestinian children. So this is basically like anything you do is supporting the genocidal regime of Israel. You also mentioned
That's interesting because years ago, I remember Pepsi did an ad with Kylie Jenner.
So it wasn't like a Pepsi,
bringing people together.
Yeah, it wasn't a Pepsi ad, like a Pepsi ad. It was like one of the examples, just to clarify.
And I think Hassan Piker, who's like this huge, like anti-Israel asshat, I think he got harassed by one of his fans for drinking Coke Zero and saying, "Hey, Coco, these are one of the companies that we're supposed to boycott or whatever."
So someone in the chat also brought up that he doesn't think that the Palestinian children are innocent because he saw like the videos about UNRWA education and how they educate them. So when I talk about the children, I don't mean like 16, 17-year-olds. I think like 5 or 6-year-olds who I don't think you can ascribe any sort of like moral responsibility to them. Anything they say or they do is forced on them. And Jonathan.
If I may, the 5-year-olds are not responsible there, but their parents sure are. The parents, they had them, right? They gave birth to them knowing that there is a very good chance that Hamas or any other militant group will take them once they're 16 or 17 and to enlist them as one of the soldiers, or indoctrinate them into this system. They'll become whatever, a part of the system. So the parents knew that. Nevertheless, they had these children, and they're having lots of children, and some of them they think it's their duty because they have to increase the amount of soldiers they have. This is a war, also a demographic war. So the responsibility is definitely on the children, on the parents. You are not to have children if the kind of life you're giving them is the kind of life that exists, for example, in Gaza. It's just immoral. What kind of future would they have? Not best, but it's very well that they will not live beyond 20 something because of what's going on there. So what's the point?
Yeah. So coming back to the idea of sanctions. So, they, for one, they quoted a lot the recent Sunday strike, but I also quoted the whole of Rafah offensive, again quoting the International Court of Justice. So I'll just bring it up from the article. The International Court of Justice ruled Friday that Israel must immediately halt its offensive in Rafah, which pretty much means Israel, don't defend yourself. What happened on October 7th was okay, and you have no right to actually try to stop it. Continuing in the southern Gaza Strip, and opened the Rafah border crossing to allow humanitarian aid to enter the enclave unimpeded. So again, not only stop it, but
that. Why don't they say allow Palestinians to leave out of the Rafah crossing as well, just to bring humanitarian aid? But they will not fight for their right as refugees of war, which it is their right to leave, to go to a different country, as all the European countries let Ukrainians. I'm pretty sure all of them. I don't know, maybe there are exceptions, but the neighboring countries let Ukrainians enter. Why are those friends of the Palestinian people, the poor Palestinian children who are suffering, why are they not fighting for their right as refugees to go to safe haven, Egypt, or then in Europe? Why are they not fighting for it?
I think the answer is clear, and it has been since basically UNRWA has been founded. It is to perpetuate this conflict. It is to make sure that there will always be Palestinian refugees. It doesn't matter that they are not living there anymore. And also, most importantly, UN has never tried to resettle them. I mean, when you have refugees, after some time, there is a certain effort to basically, sort of give up on the fact that they would be coming back and try to resettle them and find a home somewhere else. I mean, there's enough countries in the world to spread out all the Palestinians.
Actually, the tragedy the Washington Post and the Telegraph and all these newspapers report on, the tragedy that these people are forced to remain refugees for generations and to be served as pawns against the Jews. That's what they're using them for, as pawns against Israel. They're so insignificant. Nobody cares for them. Nobody cares for the Palestinians' well-being. They care for them only insofar as they fight against Israel.
So I have one video that we can watch, but before that, Kirk, do you have anything more to say about the UNRWA? Or
yeah, UNRWA, and then reading these articles about the Irish foreign minister, and in some of these articles really plays up all this stuff about international law, and the International Court of Justice said this, and the UN said that, and this and that, and I think it's just a healthy reminder that the best thing you could say about groups like the United Nations is that they are a very useless organization. They have this pretense of international law, yet they don't really have the means to enforce it, yet they rather rely on countries that adhere or sign on to like stuff like the ICJ or the ICC or whatever the group is called these days, to enforce their laws on their behalf, but otherwise, like, they're not going to go into all these countries with their own military force or police force or whatever to enforce international law. And even worse, it seems to be that a lot of times international law is used by evil players like Hamas to convince the better countries of the world, like Israel, to pull their punches. It reminds me of it's like a very professional wrestling heel mentality. Over the weekend, there was a pay-per-view, King of the Ring. It was in Saudi Arabia, and Logan Paul was taking on Cody Rhodes for the championship. I kind of wish Razi was here so we could hear this. So Logan Paul, he had his entourage at ringside, and they gave him brass knucks, and he was cheating, and he was doing low blows. And then when Cody Rhodes got aid from one of the announcers at the Saudi Arabia announce table after he lost the match, spoiler alert, Logan Paul went on Instagram to say, "I was robbed." Real heel mentality where, the bad guys, they're not expected to follow the rules. And in fact, they're expected to break them if it furthers their agenda. The rules are really for the good guys. They're expected to adhere to these impossible standards that only makes it impossible for them to defend themselves and beat the bad guys.
Yeah, I mean, very importantly, you mentioned how there are sanctions against Hamas. Hamas is designated a terrorist organization. But what this recent move from the EU does is that it equates all of this. Hamas and Russia, who have sanctions against them, who Russia has attacked a nation with no justification at all. And Hamas has tried to basically kill as many Jews as they could at once. And Israel trying to defend themselves by getting rid of a terrorist organization. It's all the same, because people die. And just because people die, we remove all the context, we remove all the things that matter, all the principles, and we just focus on the fact that people die. As Jonathan mentioned, the picture of children dying in Palestine is enough to basically justify anything you want.
I do want to say something. Someone in the chat mentioned that the ICJ and the ICC are two different bodies. I'm aware of that. The reason why I said or whatever is because it just seems like there's a plethora of these different like international groups, UN, ICJ, ICC, Amnesty International, all these groups that a lot of anti-Israeli people like to bring up and say, oh, Israel broke this humanitarian rights agreement over here. They broke this international law over there. And it's just impossible to keep up with these days. I guess
and again, when you mention ICC, Putin and all the butchers of Hamas and Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant, same thing. It's all of them are going to criminal court. It's all the same. Also, just quickly, because Kirk, you mentioned the UN is a very useless organization. It is a really good organization at what it does, legitimizing dictators. And attacking Israel is pretty much almost exclusively what it focuses on. Anything, Jonathan, anything you'd like to say before we move on to the video?
Oh, there's a video. I just wanted to say there was a comment about it's their home. It's the Palestinians. Of course, they don't want to leave. It's their home. Look, you have to understand that in Gaza, there's a lot of illusions. You see mosques, but it's actually weapons storage facility. You see hospitals, it's actually dungeons where they hold our hostages. You see homes? No, it's rocket storage facility. These aren't homes, these aren't mosques. It's all military targets. And when you use your home to put some AK-47s for Hamas to use later, you've lost your right to the home. I'm very sorry. We have to remove it because Israel has the right to defend its own people. It has a duty. So you use your home to fight against that, I'm sorry, you're going to have to become homeless.
And maybe they meant it more broadly, as in, this is the land of the Palestinians as they have been living here for a long time. And when it comes to rights have to be recognized. Hamas or Palestinian Authority or whatever organization or even whatever nation you have in the Middle East, excluding Israel, have very little recognition for any sort of rights. There is no idea that these people have this sort of collective right to the land. You only have individual rights to your house or your land that has to be recognized by a government. When you have authorities such as Hamas who doesn't have any recognition for such rights, you cannot claim any rights. So let me quickly thank some super chats. So thank you, Jonathan, for your super sticker. Thank you, Stefan, for your super sticker. Thank you, Jeff, for your super sticker. And thank you, Christian, for your super chat. He says, Europe is a la-la land. They want Ukraine to win, but debate endlessly what material to give them, how they are allowed to use it or not. Israel is backstabbed all the time. I'm fed up with those appeasers. And yeah, something I remember specifically with Ukraine that I'm not sure if it was resolved or it later became true, but there was a debate about sending a certain type of and I'm not sure what it was exactly, maybe rockets or some munition that had some sort of long-range missiles, I think it was specifically, that could potentially reach into Russian land. And there was a big debate over it because, yeah, you can defend yourself, but not too much. Don't you dare actually, try to attack the source of your problems. Just attack the symptom.
Yeah, and it means that they don't have a right to defend themselves, because if you have a right, you don't get permission when or for how much or for how long the range of the missile is. If you have a right to defend yourself, you have a right to defend yourself, period. It's not a matter of a radius you're allowed to have rights. It's like COVID, Dan. You're allowed to leave your house within 100 meters. You have a right. You have a right to free movement. That's not a right.
Okay, anything else, or should we go to the video?
Let's see.
So, all right. So this is a leader of the opposition in the Irish Parliament.
Today, Ireland officially recognises the state of Palestine. This is historic and significant. It should have happened a long time ago. I want to commend activists who for decades have argued for Palestinian freedom, for human rights, for an end to occupation, for an end to the apartheid regime. But it's happening today. This, of course, has to be a start, because the genocide continues. Israel acts with impunity. They have to be called to account. That means real concerted action. It means sanctions. It means the clearest message that Israel will be held to account. So Ireland now, having taken this step, we need to now move forward with purpose, because every day Palestinian lives are being lost. Gaza, the graveyard of children. The West Bank too, lives lost day on day. This must stop. We need a ceasefire. We need a peace process. Israel must be accountable for their actions.
So yeah, I have a lot of things to say about this one, but I'll leave it to you guys. I'll just make one point. At the start, she mentioned, we have finally recognized Palestine, and just to for context, so this happened yesterday on Tuesday, together with Spain and Norway, who have recognized the Palestinian state, whatever that means. But she mentioned how they were trying for decades, but they had to wait until Hamas tries to kill a bunch of Jews until they could officially do it. And with that, Jonathan, what do you think about this video?
How do you say in the UK? What a bunch of bollocks, isn't it? Everything she said is a lie. The truth is, I don't think she said anything accurate. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah, everything. The world is upside down. Israel is the genocide. We are the murderers. We are evil. They are just saints. They are so the amount of value Palestine brings to the world is amazing. Like, think about all the great inventions, all the great Nobel Prize winners, all the great advancements they have contributed to human flourishing around the world. It is imperative that a state like Ireland, who stands for these very ideals, would recognize them. Of course, I would just ask this lady, which Palestine are you recognizing? Are you recognizing the Palestine in Gaza? Maybe the Palestine in Ramallah? Maybe it's the Palestine in other areas in the West Bank, because there are different gangs who rule these areas. Just point that in the map. Which one is it? What is its borders? Is it the 67 borders, the 48 borders, the nowadays borders? Maybe she's talking about Jordan. Jordan could also be said. It's mostly majority Palestinian. What the hell is she on about? Where is this country? Who are its leaders? Where is the embassy? I've heard they say Spain. They said the embassy is going to be in East Jerusalem, and the embassy in Israel is, of course, in Tel Aviv. I don't know if should we go one by one, because we all know it's all nonsense, right? There's no genocide. Population of Gaza is only increasing. There's no well, now it's not increasing, obviously now there's war, but historically it has always been increasing. What else is there? Apartheid, she says. There's no if they are an independent state, how is that an apartheid? The Arabs inside Israel, obviously they have equal rights. So what are, if she now officially recognizes Palestine, then where is the apartheid happening? What else? This is really Joseph Goebbels level propaganda. I don't know, Kirk, maybe you have something more to say about this. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm just gonna jump in quickly before I give it to Kirk. Yeah, I think we should definitely make a Palestinian bingo or an Israeli-Palestinian conflict bingo, because whenever you listen to these people, it's always the same. You just, you put apartheid in the middle because, that's the free slot. And it's always, Israeli genocide, open air prison, apartheid, Israel is committing genocide, and again, acting with impunity. I mean, come on, what kind of point is that? I mean, Yeah, there's so many things to say about it, but
Also, I would say, what is the service this lady is providing for her Irish population, her Irish taxpayers? If they are, boycotting Israel, what are they gaining from it? What does the average Irish person gain? He gets more expensive technology. He doesn't get agriculture that could have been exported. I know Israel exports agriculture to England, for example. There are a lot of things they benefit from Israel. They can benefit from trading with Israel. What are they benefiting from trade with Palestine? What is the service she's providing for her citizens?
yeah, it kind of reminds me of how there was this girl, I think a student, on a British TV saying that Britain shouldn't sell arms to Israel, and the actual percentage of like weapons that Israel gets from UK is like 0.2% or something like that. So yeah, this for them it's clearly not about any sort of like practical.
The Europeans need weapons from Israel. The Europeans need the Iron Dome. They need all these against the Russians. The Ukrainians need these systems. What weaponry does Europe manufacture? It's all in the US anyway.
Kirk, what did you think about this video?
I mean, what does she mean by, we're going to recognize, so does that mean she's legitimizing Hamas? Because they are the governing authority of Gaza, whether you like it or not. And is that what it means, recognizing Palestine as a sovereign state?
So again, it's hard to say. Whenever people say they recognize Palestine, usually they refer to the Palestinian Authority. Palestinian Authority is also the one, not a nation, the group of people that have a seat in the UN also. So that's what usually that means. But again, coming after October 7th really makes you ask, okay, why now? Why specifically now?
Yeah, and just to go to my point, if it really is recognizing Hamas as if they are a legitimate government, this reminds me of earlier this year I binged The Handmaid's Tale, which is often used. It's a good show. I actually like a lot of the stuff about A Handmaid's Tale, but a lot of people on the left like to hold it up whenever they, like, Republicans do something they don't like or that they find alarming. They say, "Oh, wow, this is literally The Handmaid's Tale." Like, that's the common meme that you get from a lot of people on the left. And it's like one of the aspects of The Handmaid's Tale, for those who don't know, The Handmaid's Tale is about a group of religious fanatics, religious theocrats who overthrow the US government and establish a brutal form of theocracy. And Canada becomes like this safe haven for refugees. But there's a moment in where the Canadian government starts to come around on recognizing what is called Gilead as a legitimate government. They start letting them set up embassies in places like Toronto. And on top of that, they illustrate that there are a lot of sympathizers in Canada of the new Gilead as, oh, well, they're doing God's work and they manage to solve societal problems and the whole fertility rate and whatnot. And it's portrayed as this horrible thing. On top of that, I've read that Margaret Atwood, who wrote the original novel, drew inspiration from the Islamic Republic of Iran for the bad guys in her novel that they eventually made a TV show out of. And as we know, the Islamic Republic of Iran, brutal form of theocracy that a lot of these, people who like to throw around the G word and the apartheid word and human rights, international law, oppressive this, they never apply that to the Islamic Republic of Iran. When they talk about colonialism and imperialism, oh, Israel is this colonial state, the settler state. They say nothing about Iran's involvement with funding terrorist groups and all these proxies through Hamas and the Houthis and Hezbollah, all of whom want to impose a brutal form of theocracy. And now we have a better country in the world like Ireland, despite all of its flaws. It's one of the better, freer countries in the world. And they're starting to recognize Hamas, it seems like. It seems like they're opening up to recognize them as if they are a legitimate government, ignoring all the baggage that they bring, ignoring the fact that they are motivated by imposing a brutal form of theocracy, on top of the fact that you have a lot of activist asshats in the streets. I imagine in places like Ireland, we've seen it in the United States, Canada, and the United Kingdom, of people, supporting groups like Hamas and Hezbollah and the Al-Qassam brigades in Iran and all those loons, goons, and buffoons of the world. So yeah, this is literally The Handmaid's Tale is the point I'm getting at.
Yeah, I mean, when they started after October 7, and yeah, when Ireland has become one of the biggest, basically pro-Hamas countries out there, it really disappointed me, because Ireland, yeah, is one of the, when you look at Heritage Foundation ranking, it's one of the freest nations. It sort of has been described as a tax haven, but also like, despite their sort of conservative, they're all Catholic, it's a very conservative nation. They, I believe, like an actual conservative government has like legalized abortion or made abortion more accessible. So they had this sort of like, both social and economic freedoms, and yet this coming after all that, it's very disappointing, and especially because it's probably not very principled, just this sort of it's just a quick comparison. Oh, we were colonized by the British, so we have to stand behind any sort of any Arabs, any savages that the Europeans came into.
Israel was also colonized by the British, by the way. It's the same thing, right? Israel also fought for its independence against the British. Israel has an entire resistance, which was one of the most successful rebellions against the British occupation. So if there was anything, any anti-colonialist, it's Israel. Israel, they escaped. The British escaped. They just left. They couldn't manage. What a disgrace. And the other countries also we should mention: Norway, Spain. All these Western countries that jump, they're essentially inviting their own demise, because what they're saying is, yeah, do terrorism, kill people, kill civilians in the name of Allah, in the name of Sharia law. We will give you a state, we will give you money, we'll give you a United Nations agency just for you, we'll give you anything, just kill more Jews, kill more innocent people. Once they're finished with the Jews, you better be sure that they'll move to the Christians. You think Islam is fine with Christianity? Of course not. They want to be an Islamic caliphate. In Islamic caliphate, you cannot be a Christian. You can't even be a Christian in other Islamic countries as of now. So do you think they'll let it happen in Europe? Of course not. So these Europeans are in a course of suicide. There was a great book written about this. The strange death of Europe, I think. It has to do. I'm translating the Hebrew name. I don't know, Douglas something. Anyway,
Murray?
Yeah, exactly, Douglas Murray. So there's a lot of that in it. What can we say? These Irish people, silly bunch. They should go back to. No, I won't say anything racist. I'm sorry. Yeah.
So someone in the chat, some troll, has been making fun of what Israel has fought for its independence. I mean, I would say like open a book, but open a Wikipedia article. As soon as Israel declared independence, all Arab nations were pretty much like, no, that's not cool having an independent Jewish state.
Even before that, there was a resistance movement. The British were occupying. There was occupation. There was actual occupation, right? There were British colonialists. There was British police. Not far from where I live, there used to be a British police station, and they would govern the city, right? And they would control. Would the Jews be allowed in? Coming from the Holocaust, the Jews would escape here, and the British would not let them in. That's real occupation. That's also, you can say, apartheid, maybe, because the Jews were not allowed in, right? So that was real occupation, and there were resistance who fought against that, and the British left. And I would have prepared the quote for you from the official British ministry explaining why they left. But essentially the message was because it was too expensive, it required too many soldiers, and it's not worth it. So we're buggering off, and you guys deal with it, because we can't deal with you.
So we have a super chat from Tricycle Jesus, what a name, from one of my favorite currencies, the South African Rand, and he says there's a lot of popular, not fringe, opposition to Sanchez in Spain that is firmly pro-Israel. Their parliament speeches were very powerful. I mean, yeah, we've definitely seen a lot of a bunch of countries such as the Czech Republic really coming in a support for Israel, as well as a lot of people actually, seeing the craziness on the pro-Palestinian side, and firmly rejecting it. So we have we have the EU elections coming up next week, actually. So it's going to be, I think it's 4 days where all the countries are going to have their elections, and it was already projecting that the sort of more right-wing parties are going to get seats. So I'm wondering how much Israel is actually going to affect this, and how much the EU policy might change with all this that has been happening. Anything else
to immigration? I assume that would be the biggest issue, wouldn't it?
Sorry, can you say that?
I'm saying probably immigration would be the biggest issue of Muslims and that kind of stuff, right? And the right wing will be, the basically anti-Muslim parties. It's bad. It's not a good thing. It's not a good thing. And we should be careful of these right wingers. They're not our friends. Immigration is great. Having freedom to choose a better future for yourself is fantastic. We should all encourage that all people of the world would have the opportunity. That's why I'm saying we should fight for the Palestinians' right to get out, to find a better future elsewhere, to get out of the war zone and go to better, more flourishing places. It should be said that these immigrants, there are some of them who want to bring their laws to Europe. They want to bring their Sharia laws inside Europe, and that should be disallowed. But generally speaking, there should be free immigration. So I would very much be aware of these right-wing parties who are pro-Israel. A lot of them might be pro-Israel. I don't trust them. They're now pro-Israel.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, no. To second your point, let's brain drain all of these authoritarian countries, especially ones that are both hostile or at least adversarial to the United States. I saw a clip going around, I think last week, from a lot of conservatives, Republican types, and there was a clip. I think it was Turkish and Iranian immigrants who were trying to come into California from the Mexican border, and they were saying like, "Yeah, we're coming in here because we're fleeing from these, oppressive. We don't have freedom in Iran. We don't have freedom in Turkey." And I get the concern about stuff like terrorism, especially in today's world. But I would say even more reason to really lift all restrictions on legal immigration, because then a lot of these immigrants will probably try to come in legally, in which you'll be better equipped to vet and screen them to see if they have any terrorist leanings, or if that's what they're motivated by. Or in the case of China, communist China, maybe they're sending spies. I've seen that, because I know a lot of people are like from China are going to like South America and then trying to sneak into America illegally. And people are like, well, what if they're spies? But it's like, what if they're not? What if they just want to flee their authoritarian hellhole and they have a lot to offer a country like America? Rather have them here than producing values and wealth in China.
Yeah. By the way, you mentioned, Jonathan, that we should be wary of this like right-wing parties that seemingly seem to support Israel, but are basically antagonistic to our ideas. And something I have noticed that the actual more, let's say, extremists or radical right-wingers are against Israel. They sort of have to, I've seen this video of like, I don't know, his name is J Rack on YouTube, and he has a lot of like different characters, like political characters. So he had his like Nazi character who as soon as he heard about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, he was like very like, he didn't know which side to support. Like, oh, I want to kill Muslims, but I don't want to support Jews. And this, to some extent, this is actual reality. A lot of like this, like more extremist right-wingers are opposed to Jews and sort of have this alliance with the left or the far left, because all of them, I mean, just to bring up an example, someone like Nick Fuentes, when it comes to, as earlier Kirk mentioned, Hassan Piker, who is this sort of like far leftist, he actually gets a lot of his points from people like Nick Fuentes, or like the extreme right. So I think in situations like this, it really shows how, yeah, you cannot stand or ally yourself with either statist side. You know, the alternative is not left or right. It's freedom or statism. And that's why you oftentimes see leftists and right-wingers actually ally on issues like this. That's why I think Israel-Palestine is a really good conflict for this.
And you recall David Duke, the former Grand Wizard of, I think he still is the Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan. I don't know if he still is or not, but he was. But I think in 2019, it was reported that his favorite member of Congress was Ilhan Omar, simply because she is very hostile to Israel and doesn't like Israel.
I would also add that this is a danger for Israel itself. There are a lot of groups inside Israel who are religious fanatics, and they want to they are pro-Israel because of the Bible. So they want Israel to win the war for non-rational reasons, and that is extremely dangerous because we will destroy the very virtue of Israel from within, and then we will become just like almost like any other country in the Middle East. And then what's the point? What's the point of fighting if we're just a different gang, where the gang of the Jewish mystics against the Muslim mystics? Well, obviously the Muslims then would win because they far outnumber us. But there's just no, and that's very dangerous. This war leads to a lot of tribalism, and people move to this right-wing fanaticism, religious fanaticism, also because there's no alternative. The secular people of Israel, which is a lot of people, they don't have the case we make here. They don't know any rational case for Israel. They say, yeah, we just want to protect ourselves, we want to continue living. They don't know the virtue. They don't know the difference between a good country and a bad country. And that's why it's so important, the work we're doing here and in anywhere else we talk about it, and support us so that we can keep doing it.
I think those are pretty good words for the end, so let me just quickly go around. Kirk, anything else to say before we wrap up?
Say no to Hamas, say yes to hummus.
Jonathan?
Yes, say. Well, I don't like when they distinguish between Hamas and Palestinians. I think it's one and the same. This is where I say where people can follow or...
Oh yeah. Where can people find you?
People can find me on my Substack, philosophyIneeded.com, link in the description. Thank you very much.
Kirk?
Find me on Elon Musk's website at Kirk Wilcox, and I also have a YouTube channel, Kirk Wilcox, where I've made a lot of videos talking about stuff like Islamamia and Israel and that fun stuff. So check it out.
And you can also find my YouTube channel. It's called Damn Dan. All of our stuff is going to be in the description. Just quickly, thank you, Kale, for your super chat. Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, Kirk, for joining me today. Thank you, everyone, and bye-bye.